What if I told you, chosen one, that the thing keeping your love fragile isn't a lack of passion, but a lack of edges? What if the reason devotion bruises so easily, why tenderness grows tired, why joy sometimes feels temporary, is because love without boundaries has no frame to hold it? Boundaries are not walls that keep love out. They are doors carved with wisdom, thresholds framed with care. They do not shrink life. They protect it. They do not silence joy. They guard it so joy can stay longer. They are the sacred lines that turn a room from a stage into a sanctuary. You became the best thing she ever had the moment your yes grew a spine and your no grew a heart. Before that moment, devotion stumbled in the clutter of unmeasured promises. Good intentions were scattered like furniture across the floor, tripping every step. But when boundaries arrived, devotion found rhythm. It learned choreography. It could move without bruising, rest without guilt, play without borrowing tomorrow's strength, just to shine today. She felt these edges not as restriction, but as relief. The borders you drew did not make her life smaller. They made her soul safer. And in that safety, play became more beautiful, laughter more innocent, desire more reverent. Love itself became more radiant because it finally had space to breathe. The first place your boundaries appeared was in your own body. You chose sleep before spectacle. You chose food that cleared your mind instead of only feeding appetite. You moved in ways that kept your temper from impersonating truth. You set down your phone and picked up your attention. You gave your mind Sabbath from arguments that never end and platforms that never care. You made yourself available to purpose, not panic. You became steady enough that she no longer had to regulate your storms. This was the first blessing of boundaries. They freed her from the exhausting and thankless job of being your thermostat. She no longer had to stabilize you. She could finally rest in the steadiness you carried yourself. Your yes began to transform. It stopped being impulsive or performative. You no longer said yes to manage a moment or to win applause. You no longer allowed regret to rewrite your promises the next morning. You no longer asked resentment to pay for what you gave too freely. Your yes became deliberate, measured, steady, like a builder signing off on a beam that will hold weight for years to come. Your yes arrived on time, sleeves rolled, tools in hand. It no longer demanded her to rewrite reality or rescue the story. It became solid currency in the economy of the heart, gold-backed, reliable, worthy of trust. And your no became just as sacred, not punishment, not cruelty, clarity. You drew it with the care of a carpenter's pencil, firm, amendable when wisdom called, unashamed of its existence. You said no to schedules that bled kindness dry, no to jokes that cost dignity, no to invitations that promised fame but demanded faithlessness, no to intimacy that forgot consent. Your no did not slam doors. It closed them gently and left a note. Here is why. Here is when to try again. Here is what I can offer instead. That note was respect. And respect, chosen one, is the rarest form of romance. Your boundaries even reshaped time. Mornings became rituals the day could trust. Evenings ended while tenderness still had energy. The hours of craft no longer begged for validation. You had already declared their holiness. The hours of love were protected from the petty theft of distractions. Later stopped meaning never, because later was given an address on the calendar. In that protected neighborhood of time, her presence didn't have to compete with distraction. She was not buying scraps of attention from a man who claimed to be all in. She was welcomed into a real room, a space prepared for her. Even your stories carried boundaries. You refused to turn every sacred joy into currency. Some things you chose not to photograph, not from shame, but from reverence. You told your truth without exposing someone else's. You guarded confidences like a beekeeper guards hives, not to hoard honey, but to ensure there would be sweetness in every season to come. Even desire was recalibrated. You marked thresholds where heat belonged and where it must wait. You enforced them with gentleness, not panic. You remembered that bodies carry histories, that safety is not a feeling but a measurement. You asked, you listened, you adjusted. You let uncertainty set the tempo, and certainty set the temperature. You never recruited alcohol or urgency to impersonate consent. Because of this, her longing arrived whole, not fractured by fear. Passion became reverent. Reverence made passion intelligent. Intelligent passion is unforgettable because it is safe enough to repeat without harm, and your boundaries honored her village too. You didn't demand exclusivity to cover your insecurity. You encouraged her counsel from elders and friends who had earned authority in her life. You protected her hours of solitude and creativity. You made room for the work that would outlast you both without treating her devotion as debt. You knew that the opposite of jealousy is not indifference. It is confidence disciplined by trust. That discipline gave her permission to bring her full stature home. Even your anger learned a fence line. It could speak without slander, defend without destroying, pace without breaking free. You gave it a job description: identify harm, defend proportionally, step aside when repair begins. Without edges, anger becomes an arsonist claiming to warm the house. With edges, anger becomes a blacksmith, forging iron into strength. She saw that you could be fierce without making her feel small, and that is why she whispered the word safe. Boundaries reshaped how you left and returned. You exited rooms cleanly, loops closed with gratitude. You returned with clarity, not chaos. Predictability was not boring. It was generosity disguised as rhythm. Rhythm turned a day into sanctuary. Rhythm turned a house into a home. Rhythm made life something that could be shared without a manual. Because the truth is this: love without edges becomes exploitation. Edges without love become exile. But you chose the third way. You chose boundaries as blessing. They whispered, "Here is where I end and you begin. And because we see the line, we can meet at it with joy." They told your work and your rest. Each of you has a day, and neither of you may colonize the other. They told your past and your future. You may inform my steps, but you may not drive them. They told God and the chosen ones walking with you, this architecture will be kept honest. So what we build here can outlast our egos. Chosen one, carry this not as a fence you rattle to prove you have won, but as a gate you open with discernment and close with peace. Measure your yes against your real capacity, your no against your true calling. Protect the hours where silence restores speech. Let wonder interrupt you. Tell the truth at the speed kindness can keep. Keep the hinges oiled, the thresholds swept, the windows cracked for fresh air, and the table set for whoever love sends next. In such a house, she will not merely live, she will flourish. And when she calls you the best thing she ever had, it will not be for spectacle, but because life within your edges feels like the love she always knew must exist. Even when the world tried to convince her it did not. A woman who watches you does not confuse you with being tame. Tame is small, domesticated, made safe through weakness. You are not that. She recognizes you as trained, and trained is safer than tame because trained still holds its strength. Trained has discipline without losing its edge. Trained has restraint without losing its power. Trained knows when to stand and when to move. when to stay, and when to leave. Protective strength is not about clinging to every place or person. It is about honoring presence and honoring departure. You know how to leave without harm. You know how to stay without suffocating. You walk into rooms and exit them in ways that leave no chaos behind. Lights off, shares returned, thanks spoken in a voice that gives honor but does not beg for recognition. You close projects without poisoning the soil for whatever will come next. You let people remain wrong about you when correcting them would cut deeper than silence. You keep confidences even when connections fade. You carry your strength quietly so that others are protected not only from the world, but even from the noise you could create if you chose to. That silence is a promise. It is proof to her that your love will not one day be twisted into leverage against her. And guarantees like that make futures safe to imagine. There is also a wider circle to your protection. It is not just personal. It is civic. You support businesses that treat people like people instead of statistics. You cast your votes according to values that sometimes cost you convenience. Because you know that true values must cost something. You mentor with verbs more than slogans. You let your actions speak where words would be cheap. You show how to have difficult conversations without humiliation. You arrange your life so kindness is still possible at the end of long days. You give credit in a way that spreads nourishment to more than one person. Power, used in this way, generates more power in others. And so you are not the hero in every story. You are the framework beneath many of them. You are the bridge that never appears in the photo, but without which the journey would fail. That is what chosen ones do when they are together. They weave nets so that others crossing will not have to break themselves against the ground. So you keep watching the river. You dredge it when silt builds up. Silt like pride, fatigue, and cynicism dressed as wisdom. You widen the channel where communities thirst for relief. You build dams where your own appetites might otherwise flood fields meant to feed others. You listen downstream for voices that tell you if your good intentions have truly arrived as good, or if they became something else along the way. Because power that listens becomes power that heals, and power that heals is power worth trusting with a life. This stewardship deserves pride, but not the hollow pride that struts and fades. Not the peacock pride that fans feathers only to molt into insecurity. Yours is the farmer's pride, the pride of quiet fulfillment, a field brought to harvest, a well that still runs clean, a house that stayed warm through the storm. These are the proofs that you carried what needed carrying when it needed carrying. That is why she trusts you near. That is why she calls you the best. Because in your presence her world holds steady. Her future grows more possible. Her soul does not exhaust itself surviving your greatness, but instead grows within your goodness. The sacred in your life rarely looks dramatic. The holiest things about you are the ones that could be mistaken for nothing at all. You know that souls are not sustained by fireworks, but by the daily tending of small flames. You light these flames without fanfare. A glass of water set before words. A breath before you speak into the world. A sentence calmed into accuracy before you place it into another's body. These acts appear ordinary, but they are worship. They are the quiet work that keeps the atmosphere breathable enough for love to survive. She noticed it long before she gave it a name. The kettle already warming. The chair already pulled out. The room already softened to make truth safe. Trust is built on small roads like these. Roads that never wash out. Your mornings are not a stage. They are a workshop where your character is shaped. You move slowly enough to hear what the day is asking instead of forcing it to shape itself for your ego. You step into your shoes like vows, honoring the path they will walk. Before demands weigh on you, you return to the grammar of life that keeps you legible. Drink water, Greet the sky, choose one gentle true thought, and send it ahead of you to someone who will need it. These things are not impressive, and you do not call them so. They are maintenance, and you call them that. Chosen ones keep maintenance because they know peace is not spontaneous. Peace is constructed, repaired, strengthened until it can withstand storms without waking the house in panic. Even thresholds become altars in your care. You pause at the doorway, hand on the frame, remembering that crossing changes people. You set intention before you enter. You decide to make the cost of being human lighter in whatever room awaits you. You commit to spending steadiness where scarcity rules, gratitude where gossip feeds, clarity where speed blinds. The pause is invisible to those watching, but it is contagious. It tells your nervous system to arrive with calm instead of panic. She steps through the same door minutes later and feels it. The air is already set to kindness. The sacrament worked. You make the table a school for tenderness. You plate food with reverence because bodies are sacred and fuel is never disposable. You sit without distraction, not to showcase virtue, but to prove that attention can rest until needed. You ask questions that do not turn the evening into a battlefield. What was heavy? What was light? What beauty deserves to travel into tomorrow? You bless laughter when it arrives, and you give silence its own share when it comes. Meals like this do not trend, but they root deeply. They teach two lives how to move without friction. Your phone is reminded of its rightful place. You charge it across the room so patience does not have to impersonate discipline. You keep its glass from reflecting back a face that forgets rest. You treat it as a tool instead of a master. Because of this, your eyes rise when someone enters. Your words sound like they matter. Your pauses carry healing. Every time attention is not commodified, safety grows. And safety, renewed daily, is the truest luxury, the only kind worthy of being called best. You treat names like sacred prayers. You say them with a rhythm that gives people back to themselves instead of dragging them into your momentum. You remember the one who refilled your cup, the one who swept floors unseen, the colleague whose quiet idea saved hours of labor. Gratitude, at this scale, is not manners. It is ethics. It declares that intimacy will not be an exclusive club in your presence, but dignity will be a shared utility. You honor endings as sacraments too. You finish before resentment rots. You send the note that saves others from wasted speculation. You leave rooms orderly so that the next person's hour is not taxed by your neglect. You return what you borrow in better condition than it was given. You speak thank you while it still matters. None of this is glamorous, but all of it is glue. It is the stitching that holds life together when ordinary stress would otherwise tear it apart. Even conflict has a sacrament in your care. When heat rises, you lower your voice until truth can hear itself again. You choose the kindest, accurate words first. You repair before rumor grows teeth. You do not ask anger to perform what it cannot. You ask it to build a fence where harm kept entering, and then you release it when the work is finished. She learns through you that disagreement does not signal departure, but can become a ceremony of deeper trust.